Hello and welcome to Pirate Radio. I am your host who needs no introduction whatsoever. And on tonight's episode, we tackle some fun topics. And again, by we, I mean me and everyone hanging out. Anyone hanging out live, feel free to comment. And if your comment is good, I might even mention it on the show. Actually, if it's bad, I might mention it on the show. But anyway, feel free, comment, do all the things before we get going. Go to Die Free Co. on the World Wide Webs and get some stuff for your AR, some shirts, some swag, some gun parts, some things like that. All the little things that you're not allowed to have in certain jurisdictions or people don't want you to have. Go buy all those things, make them common usage, and when you do that, put them all in your cart, and at the end, for a promo code, use the code TOXIC10 for 10% off. And then Die Free Co. will buy me. They haven't bought me yet. They will pay me a little bit of a very small commission, affiliate fee, finder's fee, whatever you want to call it, and I'll put it back into what I do here with mainly ammunition for all the things behind me and sometimes for this show. But let's get the show on the road. And if you were hiding under a rock or just actually busy and leading a normal life and not doing the things and following the stupid things that I follow, Anthony Fauci was on Capitol Hill this week. And if you don't know who Anthony Fauci is, well, that's bad of you, and educate yourself on who that little sniveling little bastard is. And, well, I guess the best way to describe what Fauci did is just to let him say it in his own words. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Anthony Fauci, MD.
Although it pains me to do so, because of the respect I have for the legislative branch of government and my decades-long record of cooperating with Congress, under the advice of my attorneys, I will invoke my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution to refrain from answering your questions. Thank you.
And that's basically how it all went. That was Mr. Anthony Fauci. He invoked his Fifth Amendment right, which is dubious at best to see legally if he actually has a Fifth Amendment protection. You don't have a Fifth Amendment right, mind you. You have protections under the Fifth Amendment of an existing God-given, inalienable right to not tell on yourself, basically. You do have that right. So, it brings up some dubious questions. If, he doesn't want to tell on himself, inculcate himself, bear false witness upon himself, it's very odd that he would say that, since he was given a preemptive pardon from one Joseph Robinette Biden that covers the years 2014 through 2025. What are you protecting yourself from? If you're already protected with a pardon, a crime attached to it, what exactly are you protecting yourself from by invoking your allegedly a Fifth Amendment privilege protection? And the reason I keep saying allegedly is was a government employee, technically still is because he's drawing government pension. He was a government employee for over 40 years. He is speaking on behalf of his time as a government employee, and we all know that the government has zero protections. The government has no rights. Government's only association with rights is they are there to protect the rights of the people. And in my eyes, Anthony Fauci and any other bureaucrat is not the people. He is the machine. He is the blob. He is the thing that needs to be resisted. He is the thing that is supposed to be, he's a part of the thing that is only exists to protect those God-given inalienable rights. So therefore, in your capacity as a government employee and bureaucrat, you don't have rights. You might have rights as Anthony Fauci at home against like the police kicking your door in, but you wouldn't have that protection against the police kicking your door in or seizing your things in regards to your time as a government official, because you don't have any private communications. The things you do in your job, Anthony Fauci, are all should be open record, open source. Anybody can look at it because you're a government employee and you can't hide from the people. Now, obviously, we all know that that's not how this all works, but that's the way it's supposed to work. So you don't really have a Fifth Amendment protection, dickhead. But anyway, there was a lot of response, as you can imagine, to Anthony Fauci and his testimony on Congress. And hold on, Josh Hawley. I'm going to put another one up here. This is Senator Josh Hawley, senator from Missouri. If you're not familiar with Josh Hawley, then good for you. You have a life. I unfortunately do not have a life, so I know exactly who Josh Hawley is. He's very famous. What launched him into like fame outside of Congress and the Senate and maybe the state of Missouri and people who pay attention is he sent an email to the NBA, I believe, about their ties to China. This is back when we believed that the Uyghurs were being oppressed, before we all found out that they are actually bin Ladenite terrorists and the Chinese were fighting against them. And that's before we found out that the whole Uyghur thing was a lie anyway, that they were doing what they were doing. But anyway, he sends an email at the time, and some ESPN reporter, forget the guy's name, just responded with, "Fuck you," in all caps and an exclamation point. And so Josh Hawley was on a whole bunch of shows like Outkick and whatever, and got somewhat famous. But anyway, this is Josh Hawley questioning Anthony Fauci. And I'm going to say, even though Hawley and I are probably on the same side politically, at least with some beliefs, we're on the right side of the aisle, he comes off quite smug here. I don't know if that was the idea, but anyway, here is Senator Josh Hawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, nothing says honesty like taking the fifth, huh, Doc? Let's try something. What day of the week is it today?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color tie are you wearing?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color is the carpet in front of you?
On the advice of counsel, I respect.
By the way, I have to point out that the the suave-looking brother behind him is not having any of this shit. Neither is the lady to his, on the right side of our screen, but to the left of our suave-looking brother back there. She is hilariously laughing as well. But I'm going to go back just a hair here so you could see as Hawley poses the question of what color his tie is. Watch the brother just over Fauci's left shoulder, but our right.
On the advice of counsel,
Not having it. Anyway, Fauci's response in full.
I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Let's just get one.
Did you see the head shake of the brother? This is great.
Yeah.
Let's go back. Let's get the full question. Josh Hawley.
The Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color is the carpet in front of you?
Watch the brother.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon
Head
my
shake.
rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Let's just get one.
Oh, that's the best. I didn't notice that until just now. That guy was the best. I love that guy. I don't know his name, but that was Fauci's testimony. That was it. That's what he said. He didn't say anything else. He just invoked his Fifth Amendment privilege, which he doesn't actually have. That was all that he actually said throughout the whole thing, pathetic as it is. Yeah. I'm going to read a few of some tweets that I favorited here, bookmarked, liked, whatever. Let's see here. Go ahead and I'll just share the screen. There he is. Dave Smith, Comic Dave Smith, at Comic Dave Smith. After literally, he's sarcastic, by the way, with having that in parentheses, after literally claiming to be the voice of truth and science as he gave the pseudoscientific justification for tyrannical lockdowns and mandates, today Fauci pled the fifth like the criminal bitch he is. Gotta love Dave Smith going hard in the paint. Aaron McIntyre is a little bit more well-spoken of things. And he says, any country where Shiloh Hendricks is convicted of a crime and Anthony Fauci is broken beyond repair. The problem is regime complete. Yeah, I'll agree with that. So, another one by Aaron McIntyre. This is a quote tweet of Matt Walsh with Matt Walsh's tweet that Aaron McIntyre quote tweeted. Matt Walsh said, I'm not impressed with these hearings where Republicans trape some corrupt scumbag out and yell at him for 3 hours. I would agree with that. Yeah, he's a corrupt scumbag. I agree. So why isn't he under arrest? Why isn't he facing any real consequences? Why aren't you actually doing anything? All valid questions, Matt Walsh. Aaron McIntyre with kind of a response here. Along the same lines as the last one. Probably should have only done one of these tweets. But anyway, we're producing. Aaron McIntyre, quote tweets, Matt Walsh's tweet says, man responsible for the deaths of millions, I'm going to assume he meant millions, and the destruction of the economy gets a stern talking to. It's like writing a letter, like Josh Hawley would have written. Shiloh Hendricks gets convicted of a crime for mean words. Abortion protesters rot in jail. Now let me ask you, what is the GOP for? Valid questions, Mr. Aaron McIntyre. Aaron's pretty stout on his stuff. And let's see here. This is from Mr. Mike Hunt. Who? Hey, Mutual Mike Hunt. Mutual Mike Hunt. You got me, you son of a bitch. Anyway, this is from Senator Moreno, who I should have figured out where he's from and what he does. But Senator Moreno reading Anthony Fauci, the Riot Act. And here we go.
It was about 6 years ago today that I decided I'm going to give up my businesses, sell them all, run for office, run for the United States Senate. Here I am sitting in front of you 6 years later saying, who the fuck do you think you were for doing that?
Yes!
It is a total disgrace what you did to this country. And if my Democrat colleagues are standing there defending you, I hope the voters of the United States of America watch the clips of every one of you doting on a guy who was more interested in being a celebrity than saving American people. I will make it my mission to make certain that every single one of those Democrats who did that will see that clip over and over and over again. Because there is no defense of what you did. You may have had a 50-plus year legacy of public service, but it ends in total and complete disgrace.
Good for you, Senator Bernie Moreno, Republican from Ohio. Good for you. It's not going to lead to anything, but good for you. Let's see if we can.
And a guy who was. It is a total disgrace what you did to this country. And if my Democrat colleagues are standing in front of you 6 years later saying, who the fuck do you think you were for doing that? Fuck do you think you were for doing that? Years later saying, who the fuck do you think you were for doing that?
There you go. That's a valid question. By the way, brother over the left shoulder, our right, he's got his attention. So, yeah, Senator Bernie Moreno, good for you. Again, it's not going to lead to jack nor shit. And by the way, if you're wondering, all of the corporate media outlets from NPR to the New York Times, everywhere in between, probably even CNN, even though you look at that commie rag, they're all carrying water for Fauci, and they're all interviewing so-called experts and other people in the sphere who are saying that this is a miscarriage of of the medical community, and this is going to lead to more this, that, or the other, and all of that. They're all carrying water for Fauci. They're all still backing him. No one is actually calling for his head, for his imprisonment, for anything. And that's one of the questions that I have here is that why is the administration not at the very least playing offense? And what I mean by playing offense is do exactly what they did to Donald Trump and put him through the process. Go ahead, arrest him, not make up, but charge him. It doesn't matter if the charges hold up necessarily, but you file charges against him, crimes against humanity, do whatever you have to do. Yeah, do the whole Shiloh Hendricks thing of the what was it? Fuck, what did they charge her with? Disorderly conduct or whatever the hell it was, like, upsetting the common good or some bullshit like that. I don't know, charge the motherfucker with treason and take it to court. Make him defend himself. Make him go broke buying lawyers, paying for lawyers, paying all the court costs, paying all the court fees, showing up. Put him through the process. Drag your feet. Do the whole thing. Make that motherfucker defend himself. Make him, if you can't put him in prison until the day he dies, which might be 5 years from now, at the very least, he can die broke and penniless and with an absolutely destroyed reputation. Not this like, well, certain people in certain aisles have a bad reputation in their eyes about Fauci. No, take him to the International Criminal Court or something like that. Get him on some big time charges. Charge him in a state. Charge him federally. Charge him in International Criminal Court with war crimes or crimes against humanity. Whatever you have to do, and traipse his little ass everywhere and break him. That's exactly what needs to happen, but it's not going to happen because it didn't happen before. Trump didn't fire his ass. Trump listened to him through the whole thing, and then Trump had to double down because Trump can never be wrong. I say this as a 3-time Trump voter. Trump can never be wrong. He can never admit that he's wrong. He can never show that he's wrong. He has to change the narrative or change to something else. Well, he couldn't go back on his word and say, hey, we were wrong to do the lockdowns. We're wrong to do this. So what did he do? He had to double down on Operation Warp Speed and a fake shot that just hurt more people than it ever healed. It killed more people than it ever healed. And it was born from, well, the unborn, actually. It is a shot full of stem cells. Stem cells, I forget exactly what the cells are. It's basically, you're getting an mRNA vaccination, quote unquote. You're only getting that because you're using the leftover cells or the cells of aborted fetuses. That's where it comes from. And so many of the articles that wanted to back up Fauci and back up the jab and point fingers at the people who said, I didn't want to get this vaccination. I didn't want to wear the mask. I didn't want to do this. They said, well, it was just out of like religious convictions. They didn't want to get it. It wasn't about the effectiveness. And people that just said that they didn't want it because it was comes from aborted fetuses. And that's not even true. What that is true. What they'll say is that the cells that are in there, they didn't abort a baby yesterday or a week ago or a month ago and get the cells from them, even though that's actually what they're doing. They're not going to say that. What they tell you is that, oh no, these are cultured cells from an aborted fetus from the 70s or some shit. Like that makes it any better. So now you have some sort of like chimera happening here, some sort of like, this is like Matrix style shit. If you're familiar with that, when Neo wakes up in the fucking pod with all the shit stuck to him and understands that the machines are feeding off the humans, like this is dystopian. At the very least, you should be against the jab because of that, because of where it came from. This is not like, a culture for a bacteria where you do the culture and that's what cures you, like penicillin or something. That's not this. This is dead babies, man. What are we doing here? Why is this even a thing? Why is this allowed that you're able to culture cells from an aborted fetus from 50 years ago, 40 years ago, whatever it is? Why is that allowed? There's so much of this that makes sense about why you would offshore this, why you would put it somewhere else where they don't have any sort of like morals or ethics like China. But anyway, again, I don't understand why we're not running Fauci through the ringer. But hey, I'm one guy. I do my thing. Whatever. So now, with all of that said, where the fuck is this? We'll move on to really the story that I really want to talk about. Or it's not even a story. It's more of a I don't know what you call it, a moral conundrum, if you will, a rights-based thought exercise. This one comes from Mr. Kostas Moros. I don't know how to say your name, Kostas. Sorry, not from that place. Anyway, Kostas is going to be. He is an ally of the Second Amendment. I want to get that abundantly clear. I do not know him. I've never talked to him. I've never met him. We've never really, our interactions on Twitter have been minimal at best. I'm sure he has no idea who the hell I am. I have a decent idea of who the hell he is. He lives in California. He's fighting a good fight there, but he's fighting it incorrectly. So anyway, Kostas posted this on July 28th, approximately 10:45 in the a.m., and here's what he posted. And he doesn't know it, but he's talking about me. Because here's what he says. New rule. If you say, quote, all gun laws are unconstitutional, end quote, which I firmly believe and is true, back to him, I'm going to immediately ask you why you believe that child rapists who completed their prison sentence should be able to buy a gun right after their release. You might respond, quote, well, child rapists should never get out of prison, end quote. Hey, I agree. I'd hang them like the founders did most violent criminals. Sadly, that's not what we're doing as a society. So again, should they be allowed to buy guns upon release? If you'd like a less extreme example, should a 12-year-old be able to buy a gun and bring it to school? Because if all gun laws are unconstitutional, any law blocking that would be too. Most modern gun laws are unconstitutional, but not all. We should stop dealing in silly memes that no one actually believes if they think about it for 5 seconds. Worse, they make the whole movement look unserious. We become the caricature of ourselves that anti-gunners are trying to make the public think we are. A big reason I got on Twitter in the first place, good on you for calling it Twitter in the first place years ago, was getting tired of argument by slogans, so just coming back to my roots here. He has a follow-up here. Some of the most common responses. Number one, well, if we can't trust them with guns, they shouldn't be out of prison anyway. Yeah, agreed, but we are releasing dangerous criminals from prison for worse. Okay, so given that reality, should they have their Second Amendment rights back? I don't think so, and this is a 90-10 issue anyway, and 10% is likely overstating how many people think violent criminals should have gun rights back. Don't worry, I'm going to comment on all this later. I'm just going to read through it. Number two, schools can just ban students from having guns on their property. For public schools, not if, quote, all gun laws are unconstitutional, they can't, as it would precipitate a 2A challenge, and property rules don't save it, because government can't just violate the Second Amendment whenever something is on government property. Otherwise, they could greatly expand sensitive places to cover all public transport, state parks, libraries, etc. Number three, vague comments about societal decay and how we wouldn't need gun laws if people were more moral. Yeah, that's nice, but even the founding era had gun laws, so the founders did not think all gun laws were unconstitutional. You're getting into some dubious territory, Kostas. There's also plenty more examples you can think of. If you are drunk out of your mind, would it violate the Second Amendment of police temporarily disarm you? If a court prohibits you from carrying guns into the building, are the marshals at the metal detector violating your Second Amendment rights? Is banning guns from illegal immigrants against the Second Amendment? And so on and so forth. Nobody actually believes this absolutist nonsense, which is why they fight the hypothetical, if we just have a different society, this wouldn't be a problem, or make up the rules they haven't thought through. Public schools can just ban students from carrying. Again, most modern gun laws are unconstitutional, but saying all are is a fundamentally unserious position. Well, Kostas, here's why it's not. So let's go back through this nonsensical thing. So let's just start. New rule, if you say all gun laws. Okay, so let's get to his question. He's going to immediately ask me when I tell him that all gun laws are constitutional, why I believe child rapists who completed their prison sentence should be able to buy a gun right after release. Well, it's very simple, because rights are absolute and they are inalienable. You don't have rights when you're inside of prison because you've done something to get there, you've been adjudicated, and you're there for a sentence. And now you don't have your freedom. You don't have freedom of speech. You don't have freedom of, against, Fourth Amendment protection, search and seizure. And you certainly can't have a weapon in there, even though they do have weapons, but they don't have guns. Although I believe that some people have smuggled in guns into a prison either way. Here's the thing. When you're released, you have your rights reinstated. The fact of the matter is, rights are absolute or they are not. That's how rights work, Costas. So I can't say that you can't go purchase arms, be that a knife, be that a bat, be that a... does that also mean you can't take some like mixed martial arts training and become a striker, wrestler, grappler, whatever? Does that mean you cannot have any a stun gun, a taser, or is it just firearms? Is that just where you're at? Because here's the thing: as much as we hate child rapists, and yes, they should not ever be let out, they should be capital punished on a clear-cut child rape case, obviously. But here's the thing. Do they not now need more protection than ever? But also, did they use a gun in the crime? Why is this the one thing that you have pounced on? And obviously, it's probably because being the director of legal research and education at the Second Amendment Foundation, I believe is the name of the organization. Let's see here. Yeah, Second Amendment Foundation. Okay. You're not really doing well in educating. Now, I understand that you're probably just coming at this from the we're trying to get a broad coalition. But when you come in and you do this, like firearms policy, they are not on board either with all gun laws are constitutional. I don't believe that the National Association of Gun Rights, pretty much in a lot of my fellow travelers are the only ones that believe that all gun laws are unconstitutional. And, being adjudicated, serving your time, and then coming out is no fault of the person, okay? They didn't use a firearm to commit the crime, seemingly. I don't understand why a firearm now is not available to this person just on that basis alone. But if we go to the broader rights being absolute, well, here's the thing. Does someone who is, a reformed, we're gonna be kind of nice in this whole thing. Let's say they're a reformed child rapist, which is just a sentence that should never be uttered, but we're thinking through this. Let's say they're a reformed child rapist. Do they not have Fifth Amendment protections? Do they not have Eighth Amendment protections? Do they not have Fourth Amendment protections? Can they just be searched at any time in their home, in their persons, any of that? Do they not have freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion? Are all of those gone? Can they not, redress their government of grievances? I mean, where are the stopping and starting points here? That's the whole thing is like you say that no one could possibly be serious. No, I am 100% serious because I'm 100% serious that everyone has rights inalienable by their creator, okay? If you have them, you have them. If you don't, you don't. What you're talking about is a privilege, Costas. That's what you're talking about. And yes, okay, so let's take it on again. Well, child rapists should never get out of prison. And he says, hey, I'd agree. I would hang them and blah, blah, blah. But that's not what we're doing as a society. Well, here's the thing. Why are we not doing that as a society? Why do I or someone else have to pay the price for a government failure? So what you're talking about is another government solution to a government-created problem. And I'm not on board with that. The assault weapons ban was a government solution to a government-created problem, which didn't work. It's another thing of like, how many school shootings, this is a trope, but how many school shootings did we have prior to the 1990s gun-free zones in schools? Yes, there were some. It's not zero, but it's not what we've had after that. And let's go down the line here. If you'd like a less extreme example, thank you, should a 12-year-old be able to buy a gun and bring it to school? Well, here's the thing. Those are two questions. One, why can't a 12-year-old buy a firearm? Because, again, as I've said numerous times before, not tonight, but in my life, I have yet to find the asterisk that is on the Second Amendment or any of the Bill of Rights. These are protections. These are not being granted to you. These are protections of already existing rights, Costas. I don't see an age verification or an age, minimum age requirement to speaking, religion, arms. I mean, so you're telling me, Costas, that if there was a 12-year-old who was fighting in the revolution, then they were committing a crime. Because what you've told me is the founders had a bunch of gun laws, and they would never have a 12-year-old who was able to purchase a firearm. Okay, well, let's take your question as a whole, even though it's two questions. 12-year-old buying a firearm and bringing it to school. Well, here's the thing. A lot of kids brought guns to school in previous generations. They might leave them in their car, but the idea that you're going to walk into the school with a firearm is a little bit out there, buddy. Again, the only people bringing guns to schools have nefarious intent, at the very least. I mean, you're distorting what the argument is. And here's the thing. I have argued numerous times that the places that the government absolutely cannot tell me I can't take a firearm are the government buildings. Now, as a society, Costas, here's where we're going to agree. As a society, we've all agreed that kids should not bring firearms to schools, inside schools, and people should not be bringing firearms to courthouses. That's kind of the trade-off there, buddy. We all can agree with that. There are a few people, if any, that say, nope, arm the kids and put them in the schools. Kostas, this is the social contract, buddy. This is the social contract between the governed and the government. Okay? We say, look, we're not going to just take guns into the school, into the courthouses, into a few select other buildings that are government buildings in return for you providing security in said buildings, government. Now, they're dropping the ball in the schools because you have a whole bunch of nutters who disagree, who don't agree that there should be cops or resource officers or arming the teachers in schools, although there are some teachers that are armed in schools here in Oklahoma. I should point out, if I haven't already, which I think I did, that Costas is in California. This is how you get these common sense gun laws in California, by the way. If I make the movement look unserious, I don't really... That's a you problem. That's not me. I'm not making the movement look unserious, Costas, at all. Not even close. I am 100% serious in that all gun laws are unconstitutional. I don't know why I have to be disarmed because someone else did a bad thing. Like, why did my Glock pistol have to be changed because a whole bunch of people who are not being held to account are putting illegal switches on them in Chicago? And now Glock had to make the V and had to change up their pistol, which, by the way, there's always ways around it. But here's the thing. Also, why can't I have a switch on my Glock pistol? Because the government said so, and you, Costas, are telling them to have more power. You're giving them more power. I don't really care, going back to his point one of his subtweet here, or his second part of his tweet. You know, if we can't trust them with guns, they shouldn't be out anyway. That's 100%. That's the thing. That's the thing you're missing. Why are violent people allowed out? And so you make the government's case for them. Who's unserious here, Costas? When you say, okay, point one, well, if we can't trust them with guns, they shouldn't be out of prison anyway. And you say, yeah, agreed, but we are releasing dangerous criminals from prison. Okay, so your response to that is, I can't own a firearm, or I have to be restricted, or they who have paid their debt to society now have to be restricted because they let somebody else out who's a violent criminal, who's done it numerous times and is going to do it again, but we've let them out anyway. Why they're still drawing breath, I don't understand. So you're giving the government all of the ammunition it needs and undermining the Second Amendment movement as you do it. Good job. Good job. You know, I was reminded of a case, not a case, but a situation, a person, a story, in reading this for the show tonight of Mr. Warwick Dunn. Some of you might be familiar with the name Warwick Dunn. Warwick Dunn is a former professional football player. Warwick Dunn went to Florida State University, was a starter. I think he won a national championship. He was running back at Florida State University, then got drafted by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Had a great NFL career. He's a really good person, good human being. He builds homes and then donates them to needy families. He's done this dozens of homes, charges them nothing. I think at this point, it started with him doing it out of his own pocket. But anyway, the point to this is Warwick Dunn, his mother was a police officer in Louisiana, and his mother was shot and killed on duty, and no father in the home. Don't make the jokes. But Warwick Dunn was the oldest of 6 kids. So 2 days after his 18th birthday, Warwick Dunn now is the breadwinner for this family. And somehow, while still being in high school, was able to figure out how to take care of these kids, earn a scholarship to the university or Florida State University, play football, do all of these things. The point to this is that at the age of 18, when his mother was shot to death, in Costas's America, he could only go buy a shotgun or a rifle, which there's some very dubious laws against, capacities and all of that. But mind you, this was during the assault weapons ban. So actually, it would have been very, very difficult for him to go purchase anything other than maybe a shotgun. But if he wanted a pistol, he couldn't do that because, again, Costas believes in age restriction upon your rights. So he couldn't have gone and bought, a Glock 17 or something like that he could have kept, he wouldn't have needed a safe. I can't remember how young his siblings were, but, maybe he wanted to keep it in a safe if he did purchase a firearm or something like that. So now he's got to purchase a giant safe instead of just a small lockbox because people like Costas think that he is incapable of owning a pistol. And the other part is if, let's say, he's off doing things, he's earning scholarships, playing football, he's going to be away. The second he got a scholarship, somewhere in the neighborhood of 18 to 19 years old, he then went from Louisiana to Tallahassee, Florida. Well, that's not exactly down the street. So someone had to, take care of those kids and maybe protect the home, probably the second oldest, excuse me. So if they were 17 in Costas' America, they couldn't own a firearm because they're not of age. They're not 18 or 21. Because in his world, because he's not crazy, he believes in some gun laws, that he couldn't own a firearm to protect the rest of the kids or protect the house or himself or anyone else because Costas says, I'm unserious. Yes, I'm the unserious one. This is the other part of you can just keep moving down and down and down. So is a 12-year-old allowed to operate a firearm, Costas? And if you're allowed to operate a firearm, why are you not allowed to purchase said firearm? This is before we get into the mechanics of how do you afford a firearm at the age of 12? I mean, if you're able to hold down a job, earn a wage, why can't you purchase a firearm, Costas? Can you explain that one? So now you are going to sit on your throne as benevolent dictator, seemingly, and just tell us when we're allowed to exercise our rights. Well, can the 12-year-old voice his opinion, or should he be thrown in prison? Is he allowed to practice religion or not, or should he be thrown in prison? Is he allowed to be Jewish? Is he allowed to be a Baptist? Is he allowed to be a Muslim? Where are the beginning points of time? Here's the other part. Is the 12-year-old allowed to be safe and secure in his person? Or is he just allowed to be searched by any cop whenever he damn well feels like it? That doesn't seem right, does it? Interesting. So where are the beginning points? Where are the end points, Costas? You tell me that I'm unserious, but I'm deathly serious about this because there is no middle ground. There's no common sense gun laws anymore because the people who are supposedly common sense think that the Mini 14 to my left, your right, if I have that correctly, is any different than the Barrett AR right here on my right and your left, the same people who are common sense gun people think those are diametrically opposed, that they're completely different, but they're not. They look different. They function slightly differently. But in reality, the thing that comes out of the end of them is exactly the same. Actually, the case would be made that the Mini 14 is quote-unquote deadlier than that Barrett because the Mini 14 there has an 18-inch barrel, whereas the Barrett has a 16-inch barrel. Therefore, it may get a higher feet per second out of the same round because it has a longer barrel. So there's that part. Let's go to number 3. Vague comments about societal decay and how we wouldn't need gun laws if people were more moral. Yeah, that's nice, but even the founding era had gun laws, so the founders did not think all gun laws were unconstitutional. Well, here's the thing. Who were the gun laws affecting there, Kostas? Would it have been people who would like the color of their skin matched, I don't know, the color of these rifles? Those are some of the first gun laws they made. So there's that. They didn't have very many gun laws when they were fighting, the good fight against the British. There's also plenty more, as I'm going to read from Kostas again, there's also plenty more examples. Let me go back here. There's also plenty more examples you can think of. If you're a drunk out of your mind, would it violate the Second Amendment if police temporarily disarm you? Again, you're conflating two different things there. And also, if I'm drunk out of my mind in my own home, do the police have the right to come in and seize my firearms? Is this like some red flag law that I'm not aware of? I believe I can get drunk in my own house to whatever effect I want, and that does not compromise my Second Amendment protections, just as it doesn't compromise my First Amendment protections. What you're talking about here is you're afraid of guns. Yes, I know you own guns and you shoot guns, but what you're talking about is a irrational fear of an inanimate object when you should have a rational fear of retarded people. And you should have a rational fear of people who are doping themselves up on antidepressants, mood-stabilizing drugs, SSRIs, serotonin reuptake inhibitors. You should be really afraid of those. Those are the people that maybe you should start talking about. So that's the other thing. I noticed you haven't made that case that someone who's on SSRIs should not have a firearm. Because that actually has a little more credence than someone who's 12 years old. Because the mechanism on which a 12-year-old is able to purchase, go down to a gun shop or wherever, buy a firearm with money they don't have is pretty odd. I mean, again, the next one, if a court prohibits you from carrying guns in the building, are the marshals at the metal detector violating your Second Amendment rights? Again, we don't have Second Amendment rights. We have Second Amendment protections of an inalienable right. And again, we have come together under the social contract of the governed and the government and the governing body, and we've come to the agreement that, hey, we're going to give up. We're going to let this right stop right here because you as the state are providing protection beyond this point. It would be a violation if we didn't have that, or if there was no one protecting the building, if there was not a reasonable amount of security there who is armed and able to provide protection, that would be a violation. And if we didn't have the social contract, that is definitely a violation. This is one of my favorites, and people hate it when I say this, but he went there, so I'll go there as well. Is banning guns from illegal immigrants against the Second Amendment? Yes, it is, because are they people? Are these immigrants people? Let me ask you that question. Because what this means is, if you agree with Kostas that banning guns from illegal immigrants is not a violation of the Second Amendment, then that means that you believe that the Form 4473 is not a violation of your right to not only purchase a firearm, own a firearm, but also your right to privacy under the Fourth Amendment, which I firmly believe the Form 4473, which is a form you have to fill out for the ATF to purchase a firearm. You fill out the form, then they do the National Instant Criminal Background Check, the NICS check through the FBI. That's an ATF form. That is completely unconstitutional. So he believes that that form is 100% constitutional and everyone should have to fill it out every single time. You should have to have your background checked, even though it does nothing. It's never prevented one fucking crime. You have to have your background checked every single time. You have to fill out that form. And then on top of that, the ATF rains down holy hell on any gun shop if they determine that some sort of word was either spelled wrong, is unreadable, or just some other accounting error. They rain down holy hell on the ATF and the FFL holder. The ATF rains down holy hell on the FFL owner. And then also there's a written record of the purchaser, birth date, all of it, name, address, and what you purchased with the serial number attached to it. So it's a backdoor registration device is what that is, because when a gun shop goes under, closes its doors, whatever, the ATF takes all of those records and you act like they don't, put them on file somewhere or pay someone to put them on file, which they're able to go and check. Look no further than the Butler shooting, Butler assassination attempt. They got the rifle. They ran the number within 30 minutes. They knew that that rifle was registered to the father of the attempted assassin, Crooks. You're telling me there's no registration? At this point, I think you work for the fucking state. I mean, you're never going to get, this whole thing of like nobody actually believes this absolute. It's nonsense. Well, it's not nonsense. You just don't understand, which is why they fight the hypothetical. If we just had a different society, this wouldn't be a problem. Well, here's the thing about society. It's weird. I was thinking about this yesterday. You're never going to get rid of like DUIs, which I was thinking about that today. Like DUIs prevail, exist. Somebody's going to get arrested on a DUI tonight. Multiple people are going to get arrested on a DUI tonight. That's in the face of Uber's pretty much everywhere, stiff penalties. Everybody knows you shouldn't drink and drive. Everybody knows what alcohol does to you. Dozens of people, if not hundreds, are going to get DUIs tonight, probably right now. The idea that you're going to get rid of like all crime or like murder. Like murder is like the worst, murder, rape, all of those are like the worst crimes. But like murder one. I watch a ton of true crime shit. Yeah, I get it. Shut up. Anyway, the idea that you're going to get rid of it. So what exactly are we talking about here, Kostas? You're just talking about you want murders to be done with edged weapons or with cars or something like that, or good old-fashioned poisoning. I mean, you act like it's going to get rid of murders. You're blaming the object. You're supposed to be pro 2A with this Second Amendment foundation that you're the legal research and educator of. This is my point of like when people go to college and they learn a vocation, whether that's the law, medicine, engineering, whatever. Like there's some things you just can never get around. But this, like when you get into theory and you just, the legal code has gotten to a point where it's just crate training at this point. Like I'm just training you to be exactly how I want you to be. We can all agree on some universal facts and legalities of like murder's bad. Basically like the 10th Amendment, or excuse me, the 10th Amendments. Oh my God. The 10 Commandments is what I meant. So like the 10 Commandments, I think most of us can agree. That's a pretty good code. Live by that. Everything is going to take care of itself, right? Then you get into like contract law and things of that nature. But the point is like, this is just crate training for professionals. That's all this really is. And Kostas has fallen right into the trap. I mean, it's just like, you don't even make good points here. You could have at least said, I don't know why you went with child rapists. Like, yes, it's a horrific crime. But, the thing that people always, here's where people's lines tend to be when it comes to, and even like very pro 2A people, their line tends to be this. Hey, if someone goes to prison and they come out, they've done their time, what have you, then that's, boom, we're good with that, is a lot of people's kind of their line there. Sorry, I was looking for my tweet. Their line is, if they're not a violent criminal, then yes, they can go buy a firearm. To which I always rebut to them, okay, let's take your point, move it one step further. If you can't buy a firearm, does that mean, again, you don't have protections under the Fourth Amendment against, search and seizure? So if a cop pulls you over, sees that, oh, this is a reformed felon who served their time, paid their debt to society, I'm going to just search their car. It's like, well, no. You have protections under the Fourth Amendment. Oh, so we have that right now. We have that protection, but we don't have the Second Amendment protection. Like, make that make sense. And then they'll be like, well, if they're violent, then blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no. Where you got to get to is, if you're violent and you can't be trusted with arms at all, then you should not be left out to society to harm anyone, be that with a firearm, be that with a car, be that with an axe, be that with a fucking pocket knife, be that with your fists, be that with a sharpened stick, be that with a trained dog. I don't care what it is. If you can't be out in society without hurting people, you shouldn't be in society. It's that simple. So, of course, I had to quote tweet him and say, you're not pro 2A. And I spelled it wrong, and that's how you know it's me. I didn't spell it wrong. It was just the wrong word. Goddamn autocorrect. You're not pro 2A if you don't believe felons who paid their debts to society are allowed to own a gun. And let's see. Some of these are... So one of the questions to me are, what if part of that debt is to never be allowed to possess a firearm, which I responded with, rights are inalienable, which, if you're not familiar with what inalienable means, let me look it up and tell you. Inalienable, I'll read you the actual definition. Inalienable means impossible to take away, surrender, or transfer to someone else. It's that simple. That's an inalienable right. You cannot surrender it. Can't be taken from you. You can't transfer it to anyone else. It can't be taken away from you. It's that simple. That's what inalienable means. It's that simple. Again, a guy named Redneck Nerd, great name, by the way, says, I agree. Here is a more nuanced question, and he's right, it was. Should the government be able to offer early release if part of the conditions are no firearms for a certain period? I can see both sides. It's a perverse incentive for sure. Yep. Very honest fellow there. To which I responded, absolutely not. Rights cannot be taken or given away, especially under duress. Which is true. It's just how it works. I don't know why Costas doesn't understand that. And then I had some people who were insane who said, define paid their debt, ? Time incarcerated without repentance and change in thinking and behavior, ? To which I just responded, you can lead a horse to water. And then he went nuts. And it's like, how do I know what's in someone's heart? And why do we treat like a white collar crime of like embezzlement, let's say, the same as someone who took a gun in the heat of passion and killed someone else, or a knife or whatever, and now they're out? They're both felons, but neither of them can own a firearm, but they're completely different crimes. Maybe if we actually punish people for the crimes that they commit, maybe, kind of by default, you would get rid of a lot of the crime. You're not going to get rid of all of it, but you'll get rid of a lot of the crime, at the very least. Just something to think about. I mean, it just makes me laugh sometimes because it's so ridiculous. And I mentioned Warwick Dunn, and he was 18 when his mother was shot to death, but there's other stories where people's parents have been killed or one parent has been killed. And if you go back 50 years, they were way more prevalent of, let's take somebody like a Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland had a shitty childhood of the bad dad. Let's say he runs away at 15, 16 years old to get away from a shitty situation. The state's not helping. The only thing he can think is, I got to get the hell out of here. This guy's going to kill me, which Sean didn't do. But, just bear with me here. Let's just think this out. does that person not have the ability, not have the right, Costas, to defend themselves with a firearm? They got to use their fists or a blade or whatever. Like, you're living on the streets. You know, maybe you scrape up enough. I knew a kid that his mother threw him out when he's 15 years old. He somehow was able to scratch together enough money to get a car, got his driver's license, and got an apartment, and got himself enrolled in high school by the time he was 17. So it's like he's not allowed to own a firearm, protect himself in his apartment and his car and himself. Seems pretty dumb, Costas. But the state said you can't because you're not of this age. That's the other thing. Is like, who sets these arbitrary ages, man? And in the case of the 12-year-old, where's the parents? Because I'm going to tell you that if for some reason the 12-year-old's been abandoned by his parents, he should be able to buy a firearm. That's the whole thing. You know, so much of this comes back to just like the bullshit about like social media and, you know, we have to enact these protections to protect kids from social media. I don't know. Isn't that why they have parents? Like, you take the phone away or you don't give them a phone. You don't give them access to social media. Oh, but their friends are going to blah, blah, blah. Who gives a fuck? Let their friends be a bunch of fucking retards. Or if their friends are on SSRIs, you're going to put your kid on SSRIs? That's the other thing. Like, we just give everybody a pill. We give them these mood-stabilizing drugs. You know, there was just a case, I think it was in Georgia. Georgia school shooter went in and shot a bunch of people, killed, you know, like 5 people. And he was just found guilty. Think he did the crime. He's 14. He's 16 years old now. Got a life sentence, life without parole. And some people are like, man, I don't understand it. Man, I do understand it. You know, there's all sides of that. And my thing of it is like, I need to know more. Like, was this kid prescribed some mood stabilizing drug from the time he's 5 years old for hyperactivity or whatever? Like, has this kid ever been a human? Has he ever been allowed to be a human with the human mind? Or has he just been doped up the whole time? And so whether that's true or not, I can just envision, just going back to my childhood and friends that I knew, we were in like the 3rd grade. And I don't remember how old you are in the 3rd grade. You're like 10 or something, maybe 9. I was like 6. You're 8, 9 years old in the 3rd grade, roughly. And I remember a friend of mine, you know, this is ages ago, in the early 90s. And I remember a friend of mine who was slightly disruptive, but he wasn't like getting up and running around. He's talkative, and you know, he's a 9-year-old boy being told to sit down for 8 hours, basically. And then one day he came in and he wasn't the same. Like it's almost like the spirit was gone out of his eyes, and it's like he was on medication. Come to find out, it was Ritalin. You know, this has been a few years later. He was on Ritalin. He was not the same person. He's fine now. This is not a really bad ending to the story or anything like that. Like, he's fine now. Great guy, very respectable. Was great. At some point, he got off him and hung out a lot in high school. Really good dude, solid guy, big into guns, mind you. But anyway, the point is like, I can't imagine giving a child at the age of 5, 6, 7, 8 some sort of high, powerful. And it's not an indictment of his parents. All this was really new. He was having some issues at school with being able to sit still, and all the teachers are telling his parents that he's a disruptive, he can't pay attention, his grades are kind of suffering because he didn't want to fucking be there. He didn't want to have to be there and do this and sit still. He wanted to be outside running around, playing with his buddies, you know, throwing rocks and doing all the things that young kids do, young boys do. And so I understand his parents, you know, it's super new to this. It's like 3, 4 years into this stuff actually being like available. And so it's like, hey, we got this pill. I'm a doctor. We'll give it to your kid. He'll focus at school. His grades will get better. He won't get in trouble and all of these different things. And some of that was true, but you're taking away the kid's like life, like his, you know, the light of his eyes. You're taking away his spirit. You're breaking him. And I don't believe in that. And I really don't believe in that now that we're seeing, you know, people want to blame the inanimate object of the firearm for school shootings and mass shootings and all of these things. But why are we not looking into all of the like big pharma stuff, all of the prescriptions, all of the mood stabilizers, all of the SSRIs, all of these, you know, the Xanaxes of the world? Like, this is a scourge on society. Yeah, I'm sure it works for some people. But the fact that when I got into high school, and if you wanted like OxyContin, or if you wanted Xanax, or if you wanted, there was a couple others, it was around. Like, this was not like one kid. It was everywhere, and you could get it if you wanted it. Like, that's not how this is supposed to work. So that means that, like, I went to a very small school. Multiple kids were on this shit. I graduated with 60 people in my graduating senior class. Statistically, there should have been 1 to 0 people on that. There was more than that. This is a well-to-do, I'd say well-to-do. This is like a middle to upper middle class, community in Oklahoma. The idea that there's like these problem child kids that have all these mood stabilizing problems or what have you is just completely insane. But it is what it is. I guess I should at least, Kostas, I'm going to DM you, but if you're listening to this or someone gives it to you, I might make a clip of this and just say, hey, you're more than welcome anytime to come on the show. I can do an episode like I did with Trevor Zantos on Zantos. I don't know how to actually pronounce your last name, Trevor. But I did an episode with Trevor on a Sunday where I recorded it. It wasn't live, recorded it, put it out. So go check out the last episode. We talked about suppressors, the firearm industry. He's been in that world pretty much his entire life, age 15 to now, more than half his life. But the point is like, put this out there for Kostas. We can do this. We can pre-record it. We can do it live. We can do it however you want. It's up to you. It can be on video. It can just be on sound. You can have just the avatar, which apparently I would imagine you care because you apparently have your own profile pictures of you. So anytime we can talk, we can start with the all gun laws are constitutional. If we have other time, we can plug what you're doing there with the Second Amendment Foundation, all of that stuff. Might have went a little hard in the paint on you tonight, not going to lie, but it's something I'm passionate about. It's a big deal to me. And I don't see any middle ground anymore. I never really felt like this, until a few years ago when it's just blatantly obvious that it's not about actual safety and security. It's about control, and it's about disarmament and confiscation. So I'm not for that. I will not ever be a part of that. And yeah, it is what it is. But anyway, that has been the show for this one. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you, everybody, for listening, liking, subscribing, doing all the things. And until next time, everybody, stay safe and peace.